Greetings, action fans, and welcome back to All 90s Action All the Time. Well, we said we would be back, and what better reason to do that than to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the action classic that is Con Air. Just in case you've forgotten, I'm your host, Scott Murphy, and alongside me to talk about the film, I have my regular co-host. He's a screenwriter, he's a part-time comedian, and he's killed more people than cancer. It's Mr. Craig Draheim.
I'm gonna show you God does exist.
I'm always fascinated to know what line you pick from the movie.
There were almost too many I wanted to do somebody else, but
we'll talk more about that in a while. Yeah. And we have a very special guest namely 90s co-host, wine connoisseur, and a man who really doesn't like it when you take the bunny out of the box. It's Mr. Brandon Schwitter.
Put the bunny back in the box. Hi, everyone.
That does seem like the best way to go there, right enough. Yeah.
I'm lucky that you picked that one for me, so I was like, oh, I know a quote.
Yeah. This is like a regular trope on the podcast where I always frame Craig as the villain and I always frame our special guest as the hero. I don't know why. It's just fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored. Last time I was here, I already had slain Craig because he didn't even show up.
That is true. It was just me and you on the Escape from LA episode.
So it's nice to finally meet the villain of the podcast.
Thanks. I think I play the role pretty well. By slowing things down and asking a lot of questions.
I'm just worried 2 Americans, we might counter or throw off the balance here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It all started from Craig's first appearance on the podcast on Deadly Ground, where Craig's massive appreciation for Michael Caine's villain in that film was sealed him as the villain of the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, we learned that apparently Steven Seagal movies, the villains are the ones that I was like, oh, I could watch a movie with them because they're way more charismatic than Steven Seagal.
You mean the man who's just a block of solid wood is less charismatic than Sir Michael Caine?
Yeah.
How dare you, Brandon? He is a block of solid wood with a ponytail.
Yeah. I was going to say a sack of flesh, but that's more gelatinous and can move at times.
Before we get into the film, we got a few details as always. Con Air was released on June 6, 1997. It was directed by Simon West in his directorial debut. He would go on to direct such films as Lara Croft Tomb Raider, The Mechanic, and The Expendables 2. And it was written by Scott Rosenberg, who would work with both Cage and Cusack again, as he was the writer on Gone in 60 Seconds, and he was one of 3 writers on High Fidelity. Critically, the film is sitting on a 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb, 55% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 65 reviews, 52 on Metacritic based on 23 reviews, and it has a 3.3 on Letterboxd. Box office wise, it made a great $224 million off of a $75 million budget, making it the 16th biggest film of 1997. So before we get into talking about the movie, we always ask, when people saw this movie, if they've seen this movie before, which I presume, well, I know you both have, but anyway, we'll start with you, Brandon. When did you first see this movie? And what was your first impressions of this film?
Can I just first be the villain for a second and derail us to say you buried the lead about Scott Rosenberg. He is the writer of the co-writer of the 2003 movie Kangaroo Jack.
Well, I was going to talk about Scott Rosenberg's writing credits more and his kind of
Okay.
weird writing career.
I just want to make sure that we're just not going to flow past that completely, because I have so many more Kangaroo Jack digs to come. But so the first time I watched, to be completely honest, this is the first time I've watched Con Air front to back, like, without interruption.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Craig mentioned this before we started recording, when we were just chatting. It's always on TV.
Sure.
So I've seen the middle of this movie probably 10 times, somewhere in that like ballpark. Yeah. But I've never seen the beginning. I've seen the ending once or twice. But this is the first time that I've sat down to watch this movie, instead of just being like, oh, it's on in the hotel room that I'm staying at for a night while driving from California to Washington. Okay. Which is the most vivid memory I have of watching this. I usually pick up right around the boneyard, as the plane crashes, and then watch until the end, or kind of just go out and pick up pizza and forget that the movie's on when I get back. So that is my familiarity with the movie. So this watch through has given me so much appreciation for it versus just like, oh, this is on TNT again.
Okay. So we're going
sorry to disappoint you.
No, that's not disappointing. It gives a different perspective on, it's not just three people who have watched the movie tons of times.
I mean, I've watched it tons of times, just like that. Yeah. Not every time is Dave Chappelle in the movie.
Okay. Dave Chappelle is, as we talked about off air, I have seen this movie many, many times. This is probably my first watch in a decade. But I've seen it many times. Something I had on video, and I watched a lot when I was a teenager and in my 20s. And for some reason, even though there's many scenes that are totally etched in my mind, and I can quote a lot from this movie, totally forgot Dave Chappelle was in the film. Don't know why, but yeah, totally black. And this is, unfortunately, as much as I really like the Chappelle Show and always remember his performance in the likes of like The Nutty Professor or whatever, this is the second time this has happened to me, like this year, because like I forgot he was in Robin Hood Men in Tights as well. Oh, yeah. So wow.
Yeah. Dave Chappelle is one of those actors where you're like, oh, I loved him in Dave Chappelle Show. I love Dave Chappelle, and then you're like watching a random 90s movie and you're like, wait, Dave Chappelle's in this? I don't know, was it You've Got Mail or?
No, yeah, You've Got Mail. He's
You've Got Mail.
Like his, assistant or?
Tom Hanks's, assistant or best friend is Dave Chappelle. Yeah. Or is it How High? I don't know. There's a lot of Dave Chappelle just random. I'm like, oh yeah, he's in this.
Yeah. I think I suppose it's like, an actor being like settled in your mind of like knowing.
Is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke a bitch? Sorry.
I guess like, I don't know. I mean, I guess he just like popped up in random things. It's one of those things that like I'm very aware of like Dave Chappelle's career, like post like Half Baked. There's like Half Baked, and then he did like his HBO special Killing Them Softly, and then like there was the Chappelle Show, and then like you're aware of Chappelle from that moment, right. Post that, but pre that, like I'm just like I always forget like what he's in apart from The Nutty Professor.
I don't even remember he's in The Nutty Professor, but I haven't seen that in probably 2.5 decades.
Yeah. Well, actually, like, I don't remember much from The Nutty Professor, apart from that scene where, like, Dave Chappelle is, like, a stand-up comedian who ribs Eddie Murphy's character when he's, like, in the fat suit. And then when he becomes, like, the alter ego, like, Eddie Murphy's character, like, goes back to the same comedy club and, like, eviscerates him, back. Like, just totally tear strips off him comedically. So like, that's my main memory of The Nutty Professor.
See, all I remember is might press it to clumps, or is it the first one or the second one when they're just all sitting around the table farting?
I think probably both.
I think
that's fair. I
think that's both of them.
But see, my memory of that is not even from the movie, but when they made fun of it in Tropic Thunder with Jack Black.
Right,
the Fatties or whatever, that fake movie. It's like, oh yeah,
Well, guys, I think congratulations are due. I think this is the quickest an episode has been derailed. Most episodes are derailed at some point. This is a tangent-heavy podcast. If you've not listened to the podcast before, strap in. This is what happens. But generally it happens later in the episode. Generally we've at least kind of covered like the first act or the opening scene or something before the episode goes off the rails completely. But yeah.
I'm sorry, is this not the episode about the 90s action star Dave Chappelle?
No, it's all about Dave Chappelle. No, because we can't talk more about Dave Chappelle because then we have to discuss other more recent events with Dave Chappelle, and that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
That's very true.
We cannot go into dissecting the comedy of Dave Chappelle and its great influence and its now problematicness in more later incarnations. We can't go down that road. That's like another 2-hour podcast on top of our probably going to be 2-hour podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I derailed you from getting us back on course.
Yeah.
You did indeed, Brandon. You did indeed. So, Craig, when did you first watch the movie? Con Air. Remember we're talking about Con Air?
Yeah. So Dave Chappelle, I probably watched it when it first came out on VHS. And then after that, it was, what we were talking about prior, where it could be randomly on television, where I would just I'd either see the opening and then watch it for a little bit and stop where, as we'll get into it, melodramatic opening, with How Do I Live Without You? And then, I want to say maybe 5 years ago or maybe a little bit more, after only seeing really small clips, like, you know what? I want to go through this and actually watch Con Air because I haven't remembered it since the very initial time, or I've only seen these tiny bits. And so I watched it, and then it became one that it was just, I would kind of throw on for a bit if there's nothing else on every other year or things like that. But, this was I mentioned it before recording. This was one because I always watch it as background noise or just, when I'm having snacks or whatever. It's fun, but watching it, kind of dissecting it scene by scene, was a whole new experience for me.
Yeah, for sure. So, since you've gotten the ball, Craig, can you tell us how this movie begins?
Sure. So the movie begins with, first of all, so there's the Jerry Bruckheimer intro, which when I first watched it, I went, oh, what is he doing now? Because he was a king of blockbusters and television for a bit, and I feel like I haven't seen that logo for a while. But to not derail anymore, I will say that Cameron Poe, aka Nick Cage, is getting discharged from the Army. It's honorable, and they're talking about the Army Rangers and how great they are. And he's finally going to go see his wife, kind of after all this time, who's working in this bar in Alabama.
Yeah. Oh, fun fact. Apparently the person, the voice that you're hearing talking about the Army and how great they are is an uncredited voice cameo, by Purrs Booth. So that's okay. Cool.
Yeah, the voice sounded familiar and I kept trying to place it. But yeah, so he reunites with his wife, and it's playing the song "How Do I Live Without You," and it's very cheesy. And he has his, I I guess it's a Alabama accent.
Is that what that was?
Apparently,
my second bullet point is, what is this accent?
Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be an Alabama accent because, like, apparently it wasn't required to have a Southern accent, but like,
he just thought it was important to have.
Yeah, he went down to, like, they were just impressed, by his dedication of, like, before filming began, he, like, went down to, Mobile. Is it pronounced Mobile or Mobile or?
Mobile, I think.
Mobile. So he went down to Mobile, Alabama, and he was there for a while trying to pick up the accent, and and he worked on it, and that's what he came up with.
Which is shocking because that feels like an accent that somebody would base off of listening to a fake Southern accent. Like, it doesn't seem like someone who actually did their research.
Yes, it does. I know it is kind of funny because, like, I read about it. Apparently Nick Cage was, he went down there and he was trying to work on it and stuff like that. But yes, it does sound like one of those Southern accents where it's just like a kind of, anybody, it's like, do a Southern accent and it's just that comedy, like, yeah.
Yeah. No, it sounds like Nick Cage trying to do a bad Southern accent.
Yeah. And so he talks about how's my baby doing, even though she's not even showing at all and things like that. But then there are some unruly bar patrons. Yeah.
To be fair, I just realized I haven't actually seen this entire movie all the way through because I went to the bathroom as I pressed play on the movie. I still heard everything going on, but I came back in when he was holding her belly going, how's my baby doing? And I was like, I am in the wrong movie.
I will say the whole opening up until, and I wrote this in my notes, they get on the plane. It feels like a different movie.
It feels like a Jerry Bruckheimer production though, because it's pitch black and raining and you can't see a damn thing.
Yeah, that's true. The fascinating thing is, I'll leave that for a bit, actually. We can continue on with the plot for now. But basically, yes, he beats up, the unruly bar patrons, like, cause trouble in the bar, but then he doesn't rise to the trouble in the bar, but then they try and cause trouble again by trying to, like, beat him up outside of the bar, and then he beats them up. He beats them up instead, and one of them pulls a knife on him, and then he kills that guy by, like,
accidentally kills that guy.
He accidentally kills the guy.
So, which is crazy watching the movie, and is always one of those things where, like, wait, so even if he's, in the Army Rangers, right, 3 men in the middle of the night attacked him, started beating him up first.
One with a deadly
on him. Yeah. And he still ends up with, like, 8 years in prison.
Because he deflected a stab?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's... I love the reasoning of this movie. This scene, for some reason, always sticks out in my head, because the judge implies that he would get a very light sentence if he was a normal guy. But because he was an Army Ranger, and therefore a deadly weapon, then he needs more prison time.
Yeah. For defending himself and his wife after taking a beating first.
I mean, the one point is he could have just listened to his wife and drove home. Yeah. Still attacked by 3 men and a knife.
Yeah, and I know. Still jumped by 3 guys, one holding a deadly weapon.
So he does that, and then while he's in prison, his wife and now daughter, who writes very eloquent letters, apparently at the age of 3. They never come to visit him because he doesn't want to see them, or he doesn't want her first image of him to be in prison, even though, yeah. Besides the point, so we'll just pass on some of this stuff. Yeah. So, and then, because of the snowball treats that he doesn't know the name of, those coconut covered things.
Did they, one, the rapper was sitting next to him, and two, did they just not get the Hostess, brand deal that they were hoping for? And then they were just like, ADR snowball, or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to point out he doesn't mention these, but it's shown underneath the snowballs. He has Cooler Ranch Doritos.
Yeah.
Like a fun-sized bag of Cooler Ranch Doritos in those packages. Cooler Ranch, for those of you youngins out there, was the flavor of Cool Ranch in the 90s because Doritos thought Cooler Ranch was more 90s style or cool or hip or whatever. But so I was born after the change, my first time I remember having Doritos was after the change. So I for my lifetime, have been searching for more Cooler Ranch Doritos because it's now Cool Ranch Doritos. I'm like, no, I want it cooler than cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's true. That does seem very on-brand 90s. You know, it's like, it was a time where we spelled extreme with an X. You know, like it was just an X. No E at the front, just a large X. And then...
And so,
I think it should also be mentioned because it's a line that absolutely slayed me. Was during the prison montage where he's like working out and writing letters. That's all he does, work out, writing letters, and occasionally talking to his cellmate.
And learns origami in Spanish.
Yeah, he learns origami and he learns Spanish. You know, so like he's really improving himself. But he's writing letters back and forth, and a line that absolutely I burst into laughter, and it gets me every time I watch this movie. Is when the little girl writes him a letter about like school and stuff, and then he writes it back. We don't exactly have a playtime, and I just I don't know why that line is so amusing to me, but like it's just I thought it should be mentioned.
Probably the accent.
Yeah.
Also, since you just brought it up, another character that was in jail for a length of time in this movie instead of learning Spanish and origami, decided to get 2 PhDs, I believe. So what was Nick Cage doing? Like, I'm just going to learn Spanish and origami for 7 years, and like, come on. John Malkovich's character got 2 PhDs while in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even sure that's possible. I'm just like, because PhD takes many to get 2 in that time span. I'm not even sure that's.
Well, he was in jail for 25 to 30 years, I think.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's true. All right. Yeah. Because he'd been in jail like way long. Like I can't. Like yeah.
But I mean, he could have got his master's.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like yeah. Because. I can't remember how many years PhD is there. It's like 7 years or something, isn't it?
It's so it's
that
3
depends on
at minimum. Yeah. So the master's is like depending like 2 to 3, and then a PhD is minimum if you're doing really well 3 or 4. Yeah, 3 or something.
Yeah,
3 or
right.
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
so anyway, congratulations, we've not even made it out of the introduction for the movie.
So for this forwarding,
for this cheesy kind of intro that it feels like a Brockheimer movie, but then doesn't feel like the same movie. He becomes friends with Baby O, who is I forgot the name of the actor now. Why can't I think of
McKelty Williamson?
Yes.
Also generally known as Bubba from Forrest Gump, I guess.
Yeah. I was like, it's the guy who's in the 90s who the whole time I forgot he didn't survive. Spoiler alert. It's like, oh, they're gonna kill him. Oh God, because that's what it seemed like. Every role he was in the 90s, they just killed. He was the best friend who taught.
Didn't he survive?
He does. No, I just for some reason.
You thought he was going to?
Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah.
he only dies if he starts saying shrimp is the fruit of the sea.
Yeah, and so he finally gets paroled, and while his friend and Baby O, so Poe is paroled, Baby O is moving to another prison, but he doesn't need Poe to protect him because he's got God on his side.
Don't forget, he's diabetic.
Yes, that is an important part. He's diabetic, and I think that brings us. Oh, then they get on the bus to go to the plane, and the guard is even really nice and telling him about how that daughter is a great reason to be reformed and rehabilitated, and it just seems like everything's going really well.
Can you tell us why they are being put on a plane? Or are we there yet?
Because
are we not there?
Plot says so.
Yeah, it's transporting them to where?
To a maximum security, new maximum, like Supermax prison.
In Alabama, or isn't it in Alabama? Because
somewhere else in the state, yeah.
Yeah, and he's hitching a ride to fly to Alabama, but then they also have to stop in, isn't it Carson City, to pick up some more prisoners they'll be taken. But all of these prisoners are almost the worst of the worst, or a good portion of them.
So logistically, they're flying them from a place in California to another place in California. Yes. So that, and Nick Cage, who's being released at the end of the flight, can then take a passenger flight to Alabama with his wife and daughter, who have traveled to that location of where he's going to be released. Because, like, is that the correct logistics? Because
that you probably, I think, put more logistics into it than I think they even thought through.
Well, no, because if he's flying home to Alabama, how do they get? And they're on California, or they're in California. How do they get the wife and daughter there quick enough? Like, you know what I'm saying? The wife and daughter eventually. Were they waiting at the airport that they were releasing him at? Is the question.
Yeah, that is, especially going on, that is really interesting.
Because they need to refuel the plane.
Yeah.
So
they're able to get to Las Vegas by the time.
I'm sorry, am I putting plot holes in this already?
Yeah. Too many plot holes too early on. Also,
you still haven't gotten past the intro.
You're just gonna like with because Craig points out all the plot holes too. So this is going to take a real long time to get through. It's an action movie, people. We're going to have to skip over some plot holes. There's always going to be, I mean, there's always going to be like too many to knock off all of them.
Okay,
but I mean, it is a real thing. Like there is like a prison transport plane.
Mm-hmm.
They don't look like this. Like,
oh, you mean the exterior is not a small C-123, what was it? A Fairchild C-123 provider, but with the interior of a Boeing 737?
Yeah.
No, that is correct. They were just Boeing 737s. It's what the prisoner transport planes were.
Gotcha.
So so they get on there. We'll move to
just one more derailment.
Yeah.
They spend the first 5 minutes of this movie setting up him going to jail. Then over the credits and like the quick early montage, that's another 5-10 minutes. And then they put him on this plane, or they like set up the plot where they're putting him on the plane, the prisoner transport plane, and then do another info dump on all the like crazy criminals that they're throwing on this plane in like a Ocean's 11 style, Johnny Hotcakes over there and, Wheels McGee and Diamond Dog. And it's just like, when is this movie starting?
No, I actually I think, this is part of the reason I enjoy the film, I think. Like, it's real comic booky. And like, you know, it's like kind of like the anti-Christopher Nolan. Like often, like, you know, when people are reviewing Christopher Nolan films, they often credit him for like not hand-holding the audience, or this is the absolute opposite of that. It's like, we are going to, like, because the thing about this movie, and I think the reason they have to do this, is because the movie essentially has no plot. It's just like, we're just going to, like, after this point, we're just going to get to, like, a series of action set pieces, and that's all we're going to care about. So you need to get all the information of what is happening and what the stakes are right away. So we are going to give you all that. We're going to give you your hero. We're going to explain why he's a badass hero. We're going to give you your villains. We're going to explain why these are the evilest, you know, they are like the Avengers Assemble of villains. And we're going to give you exactly the stakes of, like, yeah, none of these, you know, the planes are completely safe. None of them have been taken over. I'm sure everything will go without a hitch, as John Cusack's character says. And it's like, I know exactly what this movie is. And that is fine. Yes.
And then we even get the, you know, he's a man of honor. So, and his friend is diabetic, wink, wink, hasn't had his shot yet. So that's why he isn't going to get off the plane when he can multiple times.
They don't bring up the diabetes until he's on the plane.
Yeah.
Also, they don't, like...
They bring up the diabetes on the bus. He says, I have diabetes on the bus.
That's right.
He says, yeah, when will I get my shot or something?
So
he didn't get his the previous night. So it's like, these first kind of like 15 minutes or so, the film is giving you all of the information you need, because this is all the things you need to know, because you need to know very little, but like you need to know that Transporter Chief Miles O'Brien has a nice like 60s Corvette, and hates John Cusack.
Yes, and that he's willing to. John Cusack is by the book, and that's why it's worked so well. But the DEA agent O'Brien doesn't want to play by that book, and so he puts that. Oh, the other thing he puts.
Just to be clear, his DEA, his actual name is Duncan Malloy.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And then because they have an undercover agent basically going in.
Yeah,
and so
I forgot about that.
Then he gives the agent.
No, he dies so early on. Also, we should mention.
What was the point of that?
He gives him a gun.
I don't know what the point of that is, but like it does become a great part of like O'Brien, Malloy and Vince Larkin's kind of banter back and forth, because like I really like some of the dialogue in this movie, and one of the funniest exchanges is when John Cusack is explaining the definition of garrulous, and Malloy goes, "Hey, what's with dictionary boy back there?" And then Cusack fires back with, "Well, actually, thesaurus boy would be more appropriate."
That was a good one. While we have a lull, watching this movie front to back for the first time, and analyzing it, I was like, so this is Die Hard mixed with a buddy cop comedy action film in a plane. Am I wrong?
So, like, 90s action movies are all Die Hard. I mean, they're not all Die Hard, but like a lot of them are. Die Hard was the most influential film for the 90s. I know Die Hard came out in 1988, but it was the most influential film from the 90s. Many films from Under Siege and Sudden Death and so many others took the essential Die Hard template. Even Executive Decision to an extent is Die Hard on a plane. And so we have various Die Hards in various places. However, and I was going to bring this up later, but since you brought up the Die Hard template, It is Die Hard, but it's also Under Siege, because this film is like a Steven Seagal film, and it's partly because of the information dumps. It's partly because the villain is the most charismatic thing in the movie. It's the best thing in the movie, like with most Steven Seagal films. And it is because, unlike John McClane and unlike some of Nicolas Cage's other action movies where he is the everyman action hero, Cameron Poe is a Steven Seagal character. He's a superhero. He is invincible. He is always the smartest man in the room, and he is always the most badass man in the room.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So this is Nick Cage's Steven Seagal film.
Yeah. So I guess I'll be the one to move us forward. So then basically what happens is all the baddies get on the plane, and we learn about Cyrus the Virus and Diamond Dog and
Johnny 23.
Yeah, Johnny 23, who should have been called apparently Johnny 600, but doesn't have his. But I do like with when Cyrus and him are talking and they're speaking Spanish, and Johnny 23, who's played by Danny Trejo, is bragging about it, and he's like, I despise rapists. I find them somewhere between a cockroach and that crust on the white crust on your mouth that you in the morning. But for today, I'll say, like for today, I'll be okay with you. But there's so many like moments, and that's what I think I liked with Malkovich this time, because normally he'll go when he can chew up the scenery a lot. But with this one, him and Buscemi, who's also a serial killer, like play it the most straight and just nuanced, and it just works so great. Good. Yeah, compared to everybody else who's just these big characters.
I was like, my note was John Malkovich is great at like a menacing intelligence.
Yeah.
And then laughed that Steve Buscemi is Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
Yes. Steve Buscemi is very much Hannibal Lecter. Like,
and also, my note later on is, God damn it, Steve Buscemi is utilized perfectly in this movie.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird that I think it works so well, especially with the comedy maybe of it, or the irony, is that like he's almost played off as the straight man, or like the normal one out of all of it. You're like, how is this one that talks about wearing a girl's head the most regular guy in this whole thing?
It's my daughter's birthday.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of what makes the film unusual, because obviously a lot of this cast weren't used to being in action movies necessarily. Obviously Nick Cage had been in The Rock before this, but hadn't been in much action movies before this. And then like John Malkovich had been the villain in The Line of Fire, but that's pretty much his only action movie before this. Steve Buscemi, not in action movies. I mean, obviously kind of thrillers and stuff like, Reservoir Dogs and Fargo, but like not like an action movie. And even like behind the camera, this is Simon West's directorial debut. And I recently listened to an interview with Simon West, and he hadn't done any action before this. Like his background was a mixture of music videos and commercials. Apparently at this time it wasn't like a big deal that he had directed the Rick Astley music video Never Gonna Give You Up, because this is pre-Rickroll, which people under the age of 30 might not know what that is, but it's a thing where people would like send people videos, and it would look like one thing, and then you'd open it up and it'd be Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley.
Yeah. So it was originally made popular by the Grand Theft Auto 4 trailer in 2006. Rockstar's servers couldn't handle the bandwidth that everyone was trying to watch at the same time, so they just linked it to the Rick Astley video, and it became a widespread meme versus just like, I think it was like a 4chan meme before that.
Yeah. We're kind of viral after that. Yeah. So he directed a bunch of commercials, including the Budweiser Frog commercial, apparently mainly comedy commercials, and he was kind of fed up of comedy because he was always directing kind of comedic commercials and he wanted to do something different. So he ended up directing this. And apparently he hadn't been an action movie watcher. It's not something, type of cinema he watched. So he kind of mugged up on action films. I presume like Jerry Bruckheimer just gave him a big batch of VHSs of like Jerry Bruckheimer productions of like just a variety of Tony Scott films and the couple of Michael Bay films they produced by that stage. And even Scott Rosenberg as well. Scott Rosenberg before this had like 2 credits. His first screenwriting credit was Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. And then his second one was the Ted Demme comedy drama Beautiful Girls. So it does seem like a movie made by people kind of learning the ropes of action movies. And I think that's kind of the genius of the movie, of just being like, oh, we've just learned the rules of action movies. So we're going to put all of those tropes up on screen and do them to maximum effect. And I think it really works. It's so entertaining because of that.
Yeah.
Continuing on that, I think he was a good choice for this because you mentioned the Budweiser frog commercial.
Yeah.
Like he's very good at like establishing shots and like keeping just like cinematography wise, he's very good at in this movie, especially like. Because this is essentially, it's a submarine movie for half of it, cause you're on a plane. There's only so much like movement you can have, yet the plane feels 50 times larger than it should feel. And like there's a lot of sense of space as everyone interacts throughout the film. And yet it's still like very, like you understand that there's 3 sections and, the cockpit's X amount of distance from everyone, and he does a really good job of just making things feel bigger yet still having a realistic sense of size, even though I made the joke that it's a 737 inside and a tiny plane on the outside.
Yeah. Well, apparently this is a funny thing, Simon West said in the interview that I watched that he wanted to make the movie timeless, which it's not, because it's like super 90s. But like he made certain stylistic decisions that he thought would make it kind of timeless. Mm-hmm. And those things were like the plane was an example of that. Of like, oh, we're going to make it this kind of old battered kind of 90s, 50s looking plane instead of the Boeing 737 that the prison transport system actually uses. And then he was like, the police cars in the movies are from the 80s, not the kind of present day police cars and stuff like that. So yeah, that's where that comes from. That's where that decision comes from, because like Simon West wanted to give it a more kind of timeless feel.
Like the only snafu I saw, like continuity wise, I mean, not obviously the CG takes it away, the timelessness away, because it's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. But when he's crash landing in Vegas, which I know is way, way, way down from here, but, I noticed the Riviera, hotel was on both sides of the plane as they they did a shot from like far away and from the cockpit, and I was just like, oh, that takes me out of it. Can't really believe that this plane lands on the strip if there's two Rivieras and just 15 Hooters that you pass by as you're landing this plane.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think I think what it in the end makes it super 90s is really the Bruckheimer production sheen. It looks very much like a 90s film. You can tell immediately. I've been like, it has the color palette of a 90s action movie that tends to be those kind of in your face, bright, oversaturated colors that I actually enjoy more than a lot of dour colors that you would get in kind of 2000s action. Thankfully, with more recent developments in action movies, we're getting kind of color back. So I think that's kind of fun. But that's, again, derailing myself now. And the other thing is, like, it very much has a tone of an action movie. From the 90s, in the 2000s, again, things would get a bit more dour and kind of full gritty. So that's kind of the things I think in people's mind really mark it out as like, oh, this is a 90s action movie. This is what a 90s action movie looks like, feels like.
Are we just going to leave that in there?
Yeah.
I thought you might respond to that, but it's okay.
Okay.
I'll edit that out.
Yeah. So, okay, I will be the, I guess I'm holding on. Okay, ready.
Oh no, I'll do a transition. Well, yeah. that was so good that I don't think I have a response to that. Okay, so we are still at the part before the riot starts.
I'm going to keep that in there. Like, you think you make a good point, and it's like a fart in a spacesuit. And so, anyway, let's move on.
That was a fantastic point. It was it's so thorough that neither of us had like any contradiction or like anything to elaborate on. Which is I thought we would just go back to talking about the movie.
Yeah, no, I agree with Brandon. I was just, I mean,
okay, cool. We'll go
end all be all. Yeah, okay. So this is where we get Dave Chappelle, who is just there for basically to make one-liners, and apparently he thinks he knows Poe, and then it just kind of goes, oh, never mind, I don't know. It's this weird line that doesn't even really work because it doesn't fit even later, but he's sitting next to somebody Native American, and he makes some jokes about that. He's just there for the jokes, but
apparently all of Chappelle's lines were improvised.
It feels that way.
It's just him riffing.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And so they start off, and the plane's going. And then we see that both Diamond Dog and Cyrus have little pieces of metal in their hand, like little pins, and they are slowly pulling them out to unlock themselves. And then Dave Chappelle, I forgot even his name now, his character's name.
Pinball.
Yes.
Pinball Parker.
He pulls a vial of something. I think it's not gas. I don't know, but he pulls it out of his mouth, and then he says,
"That was kerosene, wasn't it?" Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. And I forgot the exact quote, but he's like, "Hopefully, at the end, if you survive this, no hard feelings." He pours it all on the person next to him and lights it, and the guy goes on fire, and that's when they all start to basically escape and kill some of the guards, and they start fire, even though there's a fire on this plane, and they're firing guns. And like, that's probably not safe to do on a plane, but and they take over, and that's where John Malkovich gets to say, "Welcome to Con Air."
And everybody claps because that's what people do when somebody in the movie says the title of the movie.
And then Cage just has a bunch of looks at that time that are like, oh no, what did I get myself into? And that's pretty much what a lot of his looks are. Anytime Malkovich talks, it's like, what is going on?
I think, like on Dave Chappelle, like kind of fast forwarding just a little bit, I think his finest moment is when they're looking for the prisoners to drop off in Carson City, Benson, Carl, and Popovich. And then he was like, kind of good news, bad news situation. I found Benson, Carl, and Popovich. And it's like, Malkovich is like, what's the bad news? And it's like, here's Benson, here's Carl, and here's Popovich, and like they're all dead.
Yeah.
I always enjoy that moment.
Yeah. He had some line about the one that they gagged and bagged. That prisoner, like the main guard, called him a white supremacist or an Aryan.
He has some like Nazi tattoos and stuff like that. And he's
I didn't notice that. That makes more sense because Chappelle has the same like comment. He's like, this Aryan motherfucker right here is whatever one, the third one, second one on the list.
Yeah, it was the second one because the one that got shot in the chest, then the one that was bagged was the second one.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then Popovich or whatever was the one that they were dragging in.
That's right.
Who was also,
Yeah, that's right. So it's Carl's. And
which they were just there to be bodies and progress the plot further. They didn't really do much.
I think also, some of the lines in this movie are kind of like majestically dumb in a way that really entertains me. Like, cause they're basically, we'll just call them by the actors' names cause it's less confusing. Yeah. So basically Ving Rhames gives a speech about like, what's going to happen when they're free and, they're going to go to a tropical island and like there's, all these great things are going to happen and they're going to be great, having fun times, free. And, basically, Nick Cage's character, he initially decides to be dropped off at Carson City as one of the kind of prisoners pretending to be Benson's Carl and Popovich, but then he changes his mind. And then when Ving Rhames asks him why he changed his mind, he says, I just couldn't stand the thought of missing out on naked party freaks and umbrella drinks.
Yeah.
and that convinces them, and that's great.
Yeah. For somebody that has 2 doctorates, he's convinced so easily and actually, most of the time, and up until the end, is buddy with Nick Cage.
That's right. He doesn't realize Nick Cage is the rat until just at the finale kind of thing.
Yeah.
I also think because like Nick Cage is doing a slightly comedy Southern accent, it makes everything funnier as well. It's like, I can't stand missing out on naked party freaks and on umbrella drinks.
Yeah. Any other movie, people would be like, oh, it's that guy. He's the rat. Get him.
Yeah.
That'd be it.
Cameron Poe would have been killed like early on in a lot of other films, but not this film.
Yeah. And so they kill one of the pilots, they fly into Carson City, and that's where they pick up the other ones, and they pick up the Colombian drug lord who is supposed to be a big part of the movie, or they keep talking about, but doesn't really. Oh, before that, the DEA agent pulls out another gun and gets himself killed. And so the prisoners have another gun.
He's so easy to forget. He's
They also don't explain while he's on there. Like, I assume it has to do with the Colombian cartel guy. Yeah. They want him on the plane.
They say very quickly that we have you seated next to the Colombian cartel guy.
Got it.
You're going to we just need him to confess or something to whatever. And that's it. Like, that's all we know. And then we know that Malkovich and the cartel guy are in cahoots with each other of like flying to Mexico, but
wait, so I must have missed this, and I was watching the whole time. The DEA agent that got killed, he was supposed to, was he wearing like that recording device that was found on the guard? Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
because I was like, device. Where did that come from? Yeah. Like, I knew Nick Cage planted it on him, but I did not know where that tape came from.
Yeah, no, it was from the DEA agent who was supposed to be. Yeah.
They're all throwaway lines, even though they seem like they're supposed to be important to the plot.
They're not something important at all. Like, the characters, like that whole plot line of like trying to capture Sandino, and like Sandino being the mastermind behind this whole operation, like, is not important at all. He barely features as a character. He's just occasionally told like where they're going, and then he's just and then he appears in like 3 scenes, and like each of those scenes he's like not an essential part of the scene. He's just being told something, and then he kind of nods and being like, "Yes, okay, cool."
He's a plot device.
Yeah. Okay, so they end up in Carson City. They pick up some more prisoners. They drop off the ones who have been gagged, and the guards think nothing of it and just take them on board. But one of the prisoners is kind of isn't this where they say he makes the Manson family look like the Partridge Family? Or he's a serial killer, basically a Hannibal Lecter, because he's in the getup. And everybody knows who he is. They, I guess among criminals, they all know each other.
Was he the one where it was like, his girlfriend cheated on him, and instead of, doing something to her, he drove 2 hours to her family's place and killed all of them?
No, that was Billy, or the one who, gets killed because they put the bunny back in the box.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the Billy Bedlam character.
Gotcha.
Buscemi is just the serial killer who, I think had 30 victims.
He's killed 30 people apparently. According to
wore a little girl as a hat.
Yeah. But surprisingly, one of the nicest ones in there in the movie. Mm-hmm. So they pick it up, and then one of the guys almost blows it, saying, the prisoners took over, and they're telling them to shush. But they put the tracking device on the plane on a different plane, and that's what Chappelle is doing. And then he's caught by another pilot and starts flirting with her, which then leaves him when the plane starts taking off. He's chasing after it, and the guy who he burnt sees him, is saying, or like trying to get his attention, and the guy just kind of laughs. And that's when that's the last we see Chappelle alive or Pinball. But because he tries to jump in the plane, and
he flips off the guy, and then it seems like he kind of trips, and then like it's kind of taken under the tires, basically.
Yeah. But so then, so they find the recording device that Poe put now, and now they know that the prisoners kind of took over, and John Cusack is trying to figure it out, and Malloy just wants to basically shoot it down. And this is where they butt heads a lot. Most of their conversation from here on out is them going back and forth between, no, don't shoot down the plane, there are innocent people, or just shoot down the plane is all they do. But Malloy and Larkin, or John Cusack's kind of superior, head out to track the plane, which they're following basically this little private tour thing of heading into Arizona, while
like old people.
Yeah. While the plane itself is heading to airstrip that's kind of in the middle of nowhere where they're supposed to meet.
Yeah.
With the cartel.
Yeah. There's a kind of couple of things that kind of happen in that period that I kind of want to mention. I think, of all of Nick Cage's fun lines that he gets in this movie, and he gets a few, I think his most fun line is when he is talking to his friend, Baby O, and he is saying, like, for some reason, he managed to get every creep and freak on this one plane, and then he managed to somehow get them in control of the, in control of the plane, and he goes on this monologue, and then he realizes Garland, which is a Steve Buscemi character, is sitting kind of in the row next to him, and it's the way he kind of after giving this long monologue about all the creeps and freaks and stuff, and then kind of just turns around and goes, "Hi, Garland."
Yeah. And also another line that pops up is when, Ving Rhames or Diamond Dog comes at him and goes, "Oh, hee haw, cow or hillbilly," and then Nick Cage responds with, "What was I thinking about? Oh yeah, hee haw." He continues on with his conversation.
Yeah. That's so entertaining. And the other thing I wanted to mention is something that you were talking about, before we start recording, about the kind of morality of the film and like what is the morality of the film. And I think so. The film had a lot of rewrites, and the scene where Malloy and Larkin are bickering, and then Larkin quotes Dostoevsky and says, you can see the measure of a population by its prisoners, kind of saying like, where, the society kind of failing people, that's kind of, the kind of implication there. But that was improvised by Cusack. Cusack wanted to put that in there. Okay. So, like, while that seems like the kind of heart of the morality of the movie, it's not. It's just like a Cusack riff.
Okay, that's why, because as you were mentioning, we talked about before, but I know you said you wanted to wait to talk further, but because it feels like it has these little nuggets of things like that throughout, but then it plays basically in the opposite direction, where really Poe or Baby O, or like Poe is the only one that can really be reformed, or Baby O because he found God. Or weirdly Garland, by the end, you're kind of like, so is he this guy that's a serial killer? Like he's good.
Garland's a very strange character. Like it's never kind of put forth how we're supposed to respond to this character, because it's like, okay, so, when you're watching like a Hannibal Lecter character, while you're always having fun with a Hannibal Lecter character, at the same time, there is that kind of scary aspect to him of like, oh, there's always the turn kind of thing. Whereas there's no turn, like there's no kind of underlying thing of like this being like a scary psychopathic character. He just seems like a fun character. Yeah. And you're just kind of like, that reads weird.
Well, even Hannibal Lecter, it's like with him, he specifically targets, it seems like, people that, were bad in a way, were not the greatest, he specifically targets like higher class or whatever it may be. I think why people kind of will root for him occasionally. But with Garland, I agree. You're just kind of saying that.
But you always get the impression of him being an essentially evil character, which you don't get with Garland, which is what makes Garland such a kind of weird character and such a kind of like odd thing in the movie of like, you genuinely don't know how to respond to this character, because you're told a lot of facts, a lot of terrible facts about Garland, and you even hear Garland himself say some terrible facts about himself, but you never get the impression of evil.
Yeah.
Which is odd because you're like, oh, this character clearly is evil. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, his character, because they essentially, like, they make him into a wild card. Like, he can go off at any time, but then they subvert your expectations by not using him in that manner.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting play for sure. Like, it's an interesting character. And I think, like, Steve Buscemi is one of the most fun aspects of the movie and gets some of the best lines in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of kind of philosophical commentary, him throughout, he's just singing at Cherry's, Cage says that he's insane. And he's like, oh, well, what is insanity? Some people might assume that it's 50 years working 9 to 5 until, he's going off on that. And,
yeah, he has some fun kind of little monologues.
I think he had a similar menacing intelligence to John Malkovich's character. So, and just knowing that he has the ability to go off at any moment really added tension to every scene he was in. Yeah. Especially when he was by himself with the little girl.
Well, they make it feel like he's there's even that shot afterwards where you're like, oh, did he do something to that little girl? And then, you see her waving or whatever as the plane's taking off. But
and he has the creepy doll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
that is a really, I mean, I know it's later in the movie, but like that is a really weird scene. And the fact that, like, I mean, in some ways it's kind of completely out of place in the movie, because it's like, it does this weird kind of, you get these weird POV shots of like this kind of killer vision. The film becomes kind of woozy, like suddenly it's natural born killers, like it's just kind of like this. It's weird that it kind of works. It's weird that you kind of go with it because like essentially it doesn't fit in there at all.
And it kind of feels like watching it this time. I know it doesn't because you see the girl again. But watching it and thinking, what's this little girl doing hanging out near this junkyard, all this stuff. And, but then you also think, is this a hallucination? Is that what they're trying? For some reason, I never thought of it that way until watching it this time.
Yeah, I picked up on that one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it adds tension in a part of the movie where they're stuck, until the army or DEA or whoever was in the SWAT, I guess, arrives. Yeah. Because there's not much tension at that part because Nick Cage is off on his own and Malkovich trusts him. They're just like digging the plane out and it's like you needed Buscemi going off and like finding a little girl and having tea with her to add some tension to that before the cops arrive and then everything goes down.
I suppose like you could get, but I mean, it's just such an oddball scene. Like I think like in a more traditional action movie, you would have just got the tension from, John Cusack doing his Sam Fisher impersonation and creeping around the boneyard kind of thing, the junkyard.
Yeah. Well, so I will say to jump us up to that point.
Oh, wait, before we do that then, they dropped Dave Chappelle from the plane.
Yes.
Or unless you were about to say that. I don't want to step on your toes.
No, okay. That works perfect. I was just going to, because we're talking about the boneyard, I was going to provide all that.
Okay. Before they got to the boneyard, they find Dave Chappelle stuck in the landing gear. They were losing fuel, so they had to refuel. So they fly towards the boneyard and whatever. And, Nick Cage writes on Dave Chappelle and Sharpie, to get, John Cusack's marshal over to where they were landing. And, they drop Dave Chappelle from the plane. Dave Chappelle falls on the car of General George Hammond from Stargate, played by Don S. Davis.
Yeah.
also of Twin Peaks fame. And that's
right.
the only reason that I wanted to include that, because it was Don S. Davis, and I was like, hey, I know that guy. And then that was the put the bunny back in the box scene too, wasn't it? Or no?
A little bit late. It's
later. Same
after.
area.
Yeah.
It's the same bit,
Because, all of that happens, and then during that same time, John Cusack meets Poe's wife and daughter, and then he finds out where they're going, so he steals Malloy's really nice car, which isn't just beautiful, because I'll go back, we didn't get to say it. Newborn babies are beautiful, sunsets are beautiful, and that car is fucking spectacular. But Cusack steals the car and drives out there to kind of stop them.
Yeah.
And then also, I think,
I just want to quickly mention it as well, since we're at that point. Part of the reason that I really dig this film, and I've always loved this film, is, as you know, Craig, we've talked about this before, I like a lot of movies that work as action movies, but also work as parodies of action movies.
Yes.
And, so, like I said, you've got all these people who seem to be like learning the rules of action movies, which I think is interesting. And I think actually, like, Simon West becomes a less interesting filmmaker. So apologies to Simon West, but becomes like a less interesting filmmaker in some ways once he's kind of learnt the rules of action movies. And like some of his films are more kind of like standard kind of action movies. But this is like eccentric because they're kind of learning the ropes of it. And also, like, when Cusack's talking to Nick Cage's character's wife, everything emotional in this film, like, doesn't work because it's too hammy and over the top, but is still entertaining. And also, like, everything is so amusingly on the nose. Like, all of the music cues in this film are, like, so telling you what you should feel at any given moment. Like, cause, there is, like, a really sentimental music cue pretty much any time Nick Cage's, like Cameron Poe's wife comes on screen. And there's, like, Cyrus the Virus has his own specific villain music cue. Cameron Poe has like a kind of superhero music cue when he's doing badass stuff. But it really entertains me. I'm not shitting on Trevor Rabin's score of this movie. It just really entertains me just how on the nose every emotion is in the score of this film.
Definitely, yeah.
You've done it again. You've perfectly explained. You've perfectly explained with no room to expound upon.
Yeah.
I've over-explained again. I'm sorry.
No, it's not a bad thing. There's like, that was the perfect succinct way to put all of that.
Yeah. Okay, so they go to this new landing strip because they're supposed to meet they're supposed to refuel and then also originally change planes.
Mm.
And during this time, Buscemi meets the little girl. Poe goes off to find a needle because they have the insulin for his friend, Baby O, but not a needle because I think it got broke. And then they're digging out the plane. They see that the police are coming. And then Poe also he finds one of these, all the cartel members.
And
then him and Cusack, and they beat them all up. And then Cusack wants to get him to work with him, but he says he only trusts two men, and one of them isn't him, or one of them's me, and the other one isn't you. And it isn't until Cusack says, "Well, I got to see your wife and kid," and so he kind of learns that Poe is good, and the only reason why he didn't get off the plane was because he won't leave a man behind.
No.
And so
and also we should mention, because like there's so many lines in this movie that are clearly trying to be like great action one-liners, or just your stereotypical action lines. And one of them is right here when John Cusack says, "What you gonna do?" And Nick Cage turns around and goes, "What do you think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna save the fucking day." Which is one of those things. It's like, yeah, people don't say that in real life, but people always say that in action movies.
Yeah.
And then cut to Steve Buscemi being singing. He's got the whole world in his hands with a little girl.
Yes.
And so they're trying to dig it out, but this is when Cyrus also finds the body of when they're grabbing the guns and everything out of the bottom of the plane. He finds the body of, was it Billy, the mass murderer or whoever the
crazy killer guy.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah.
But he doesn't even say anything, and he also kind of sides with Poe again on certain things when they're going to execute some of the prisoners. I don't know. There's a bunch of times where Poe stops something bad from happening and Cyrus agrees. And that's,
I also like when he stops Ving Rhames from executing the police officers. Like he kind of he gives this like real cheeky wink, and it seems like it's like, oh, that's kind of winking directly at the audience, kind of.
Yeah. Oh, and during all of this and the ambush they're setting up and everything else, Johnny, I guess this is, we can get into the ambush, I guess. But I know Johnny, 23.
Quickly before we get into the ambush, like, we didn't mention the actual fight scene, with the, put the bunny back in the box.
Yes.
Because they kind of crouch down, because they're in the fuselage, whatever, so there's not a lot of room. So they kind of crouch down and then they run at each other. And, this is just a very specific thing in my brain, but like the shot, because there's like these kind of weird kind of close-ups as they run to each other, it kind of cuts back and forth to these weird close-ups instead of like panning out to see them running at each other. It really reminded me of like a similar shot in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, when all the different characters are running at them in the different rooms from hell. It's just a very similar shot. And I was like, wonder if that inspired, probably not.
No, I agree. Watching it, and then it does it because it's set up in a way where, in a normal action movie, they're running and it looks epic, but there's just this kind of quirkiness to it because they're crouched so low and they're doing the yell, like, going at each other.
Like you could do the Star Trek like fight music, the dun 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 dun.
Yeah, you totally could.
Dun, 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 over it, and it would fit perfectly. I wanted to point out that a Fairchild C-123 Provider, which is the exterior of the plane, weighs 30,000 pounds, or about 13,600 kilograms. 15 tons, more or less. And there was about, 8 convicts pulling it. I don't think it should have been able to move, weighing that much, even in stand.
That is true. That is very true. How do you know all these plane facts?
I studied aerospace engineering in school.
Oh, wow.
But also Google.
Oh, okay. Google and aerospace. Okay, cool.
But I, if you would like later on, I could do an in-depth diagram of how much force it would require to pull that on sand.
That could be like a supplementary thing, for this episode,
Yeah. And hopefully no one remembers I said that.
I'll just quickly rustle up a YouTube page so you can you can do like a full like kind of tutorial of like this is how Con Air got it wrong. You can't do this with a plane. You need way more people.
If all 8 of them were the world's strongest men, you would still need double the amount of people.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah, all right.
So the cops are coming. They decide that they're going to basically do where they'll blow up they're getting like propane tanks. They'll blow up the first car and the last car and get him in during the ambush. And, what was the other, there's a series of different kind of plots that are going on at that point. You have the ambush setting up, you have Poe trying to get the needle, you have Steve Buscemi with the little girl, and then, then Johnny, the Johnny 23 wants to turn it to Johnny 24, while raping, Bishop, the guard.
Wasn't that before? That was before
It's during
it's during
the ambush. Yeah,
during the ambush.
Oh.
And John Cusack is trying to stop the other plane, which has what is
the cartel?
Yeah.
Which led to my favorite John Malkovich line, because the cartel guy tries to escape with them, but then Cusack drops the crane so that it breaks the plane, and then it's like it runs into the gas station on site, and the cartel guy is like, help me, Cyrus, and Cyrus is like, he tries to say help me, Cyrus, but he says help me, Cy, and then John Malkovich finishes it with Onara, and then shoots, and then blows everything up.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this movie doesn't know what it wants to be.
No.
Great action line, but also really,
yeah.
Sayonara.
Yeah.
That had me.
Yeah. Talking of kind of cheesy action lines, like that, obviously the king of cheesy action lines is Arnie, and we should have mentioned that the female guard character, Sally Bishop, is played by Rachel Tickerton, who played Arnie's love interest in Total Recall.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, she looks familiar. I didn't know that was why. Huh.
Yeah. That's why she looks so familiar.
That's awesome.
And she is basically just handcuffed the entire
yeah, she's really not utilized. She has a much, I'm sure she probably talks about Total Recall much more, because she has much more to do in that movie, being a Martian freedom fighter and all.
Like every woman in this movie, she was there to advance the plot.
Yeah. Well,
yes,
even
the women in this movie get almost no screen time, and even when they do get screen time, they're not saying much. They're not given many lines. Yeah. They're not given anything to do. Yes.
Or to make Nick Cage, Cameron Poe sound like a good character.
Yeah. Well, even so, watching it this time, I was like, oh, it might have been even more. This is a bad way to think about it, but the wife being in the middle, and not really. The only thing she does is tell him to come home or whatever, talk to Cusack, which I guess gets Cusack to kind of get under Poe's surface and have them team up. But as a part of, well, you could have just had her be at the beginning and then be at the very end, and him not seeing them until the very end. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah, it would have made no material difference to the plot necessarily. I mean, because Larkin already seemed, John Cusack's character already seemed on Nick Cage's side. So when he was telling Malloy about what a good guy he was, and these things could have happened to any one of us. So there was no real reason to have her around, and if you are going to have her around, then you could give her a little bit more to do other than kind of looking worried.
But she's not even that. It's like she's worried, but then also, your husband's on a plane full of horrible criminals who are fighting the police. She's like, just tell him to come home. And that's like her line.
Yeah.
So, big old shootout happens, and so Cusack, he is able to, he commandeers a construction truck, like a bulldozer, and then saves some of the cops. Poe is able to find the needle and steals a police cruiser, which then he drives nearby. And then he re-ropes up the plane. And then just in enough time to stop Johnny 23 from raping Bishop.
They also get in a nice, drugs are bad, okay?
Yeah.
From the random dude that was hiding under a truck that Nicolas Cage rolled under.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he says, do you know where I could find a needle? And that's it.
Yeah. I do. This is probably one of the things I don't like about the film, in the sense that, like, a lot of 90s action movies do this. They kind of cheaply use rape or the threat of rape as like a kind of added spice to add some extra tension. But like, yeah, I don't know. Like it's just one of those things where it just feels very kind of thrown out there, just for the sake of it.
Well, also, that's Danny Trejo's entire character.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. That is true. He's a rapist and he's always thinking about raping. That's his whole shtick in the film, which is just kind of it's just uncomfortable. Like it's part of the movie. I love Danny Trejo, but it's a part of the movie. I'm just like, does this really need to be here? Just seems like it's just been thrown out there just for a bit of kind of cheap shock value.
Yeah. Well, and just to show Poe is even more of a hero. I give him another moment, even though he's already saving his prisoner friend. It's like another moment of him. Yeah.
And the guard woman, or Sally Bishop, has already called him a really good man, so it's like she doesn't need to say it a second time.
Yeah. But he has more chemistry.
Home Alabama.
But I will say he has more chemistry with her than he does with his own wife.
That's true. That is true.
Well, I mean, she kisses him, so.
Yeah.
I didn't know most of Leonard Skinner died only to be replaced and still play music.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Mm-mm.
Well,
you didn't know about the Leonard Skinner plane crash?
I remember the who's the one that they sing about in American Pie? That's the plane crash.
That's
Buddy Holly.
That's Buddy Holly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember the John Madden football team's plane crash. That's my alma mater. Yeah. I wasn't alive at the time or going to school there, but those are the plane crashes I remember.
Yeah, okay. A lot of
and the Con Air plane crash.
Yeah. A lot of plane crashes. Back then. A lot of.
Well, I know that. Yeah. So this line is actually one I remember because I think it was in the trailer. And I had some movies that had the trailer for Con Air, and it's when Steve Buscemi says, "Define irony." Now I can't even remember it word for word, but a bunch of people dancing to a song that was made famous by a band that died in a plane crash, and so it's one that sticks out almost more than a lot of the other parts in the actual movie, just because I remember hearing it so many times. When I'd watch other stuff and the trailer would pop up.
You almost got that verbatim.
Yeah. That's. I think that's just the line. Yeah, but a bunch of people on a plane dancing to a song made famous by a band who died in a plane crash.
Yeah, idiots. Idiots.
A bunch of idiots. Yeah.
But that was the line.
Okay. Yeah.
We did it. And that's the episode. That's why you should give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify.
Yeah.
Remember to share with your friends on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
We don't have an Instagram, but Facebook and Twitter.
But you could still screen grab the podcast that you're listening to, put it on your Instagram story, tell them to you can now on your Instagram story add a link to this podcast. So you just copy and paste it, throw it in the link, have them click on it, and then, afterwards listen to Naming 90s.
There you go.
Excellent. That's all. We usually do the plugs at the end of the episode, but we'll just do the plugs here.
I felt I did such a good job of explaining Instagram stories to your listeners that I should just start a plug for myself.
There.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that was great. Good. I mean, I don't understand them, so like you've done a great job. You've done a great service on this podcast.
Yeah.
But while we still have time, we should probably talk about the final.
The finale of the film. Like, I love the finale of the film. The finale of the film is completely fucking insane, but you know, it's very in keeping with the movie. And I love that, you know, they went back and forth on where they were going to crash this plane. There was a version of the script where it was going to crash into the White House. You know, like, but then the White House had just been blown up spectacularly in Independence Day on you know, so they were like, you know, that's kind of, we don't know if we can kind of top that, in terms of like the White House. And then they were thinking about Las Vegas, and initially they weren't given permission. And they were like looking for a place that they could basically crash into. And then at the last minute, as they thought they were going to have to change plans, the Sands Casino in Las Vegas was going to be demolished. And then, they kind of agreed that they could film this scene, in the movie. So like which is pretty spectacular, you know, because they crashed, like, for the listener, let's just be very specific here. They crashed an actual plane into an actual casino.
Yeah.
And like, it's not CGI. It's not fully CGI. It's an actual plane into an actual casino. Spectacular.
Yeah. And so I will, which I didn't know actually. Yeah. But I will also quickly backtrack and say that Poe, so yeah, all of the helicopters are going to shoot it down. They listen to what Malloy wants to do it. Larkin says no, and they keep going back and forth. But then Poe is able to, after he's found out, and his friend who he just saved with the insulin needle gets shot. And then the line pops up where he says, which I said in the beginning, his friend is talking about Baby O. You know, well, I'm thinking now that I wasn't meant to survive this after, you know, and maybe God doesn't exist. He says, I'm going to show you God does exist. And he takes control of the plane by beating up everybody. And yeah, Cyrus gets knocked out, and that's how, so they crash into Vegas because there's already bullet holes or whatever.
And, we should probably point out, that the plane is being flown by MC Gainey, who also, like, you know, Nick Cage, like, there's several people in here who had a really good 1997. Nick Cage had an excellent 1997 because he had this in Face Off. John Cusack had an excellent 1997 because he had this in Grosse Pointe Blank. And MC Gainey had an excellent 1997 because he had this and he had Breakdown. Where in this one, he's like a fun villain. In Breakdown, he's obviously like top tier piece of shit.
Yeah. Well, even in this one too, there's a point where he doesn't even seem as much of a villain. Like, he's just following orders, because when Poe comes in and tells him where to land, he's kind of like, okay, yeah, he's just following Poe. Like, wait, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think he's just like, he saw this as a route to escape. He likes flying, and that's it. Like, I don't think he's like really part of the evil plan. He's just like, oh, okay, somebody's going to pay me to fly. I enjoy flying. Cool. Yeah. And also, it'll mean I'm out of prison. Also, cool.
But if I don't get out of prison, oh well.
Yeah. He doesn't seem to have any kind of great motivations. Yeah, but he also has a real fun moment as well where he's like, no, we're not getting to the air landing strip. And then he just puts on like this kind of military helmet and is like, no, I'm going to crash this thing.
Yeah.
So last time I was on the show, I had a segment where I talked about how it's how they what did we watch? Snake Plissken 2.
Escape from LA. Yeah.
How they paraglided from the Hollywood sign, all the way to Disneyland, or their Disneyland knockoff. I wanted to bring back that segment because,
cool.
as you said, the plane crashed into the sands.
Yes.
And that was practical, just the part of the plane crashing into the building. The CG where they're flying down the strip to land, you see the stratosphere in most of the shots, which is kind of like north of the strip a little bit. It's still on that main road, but it's not down where it is. That makes sense. That makes sense as the plane's coming down. You see the stratosphere behind it. Okay.
Sure.
Then they clip their wing on the Hard Rock Hotel, and Casino, which is off strip to the east of the strip, by, a fair amount of blocks, 5 city blocks, 3 city blocks. And then somehow, they crash into the sands back by where if you're familiar with Las Vegas, the Venetian is now where the Sands was, which is essentially directly west from where the Hard Rock Cafe is. So they would have had to clip the Hard Rock sign, then magically transport back up towards the stratosphere and come down the strip again to crash into the sands. And thank you for joining me again on Brandon's impossible flight paths of people in movies that we've watched for 90s all action.
That's excellent. We should have this as like a regular corner. We should have like a conversation about like what cities you know the exact geography of, and to just be like always have you on films that you know the exact geography of that city. I
mean, it's possible it'll just work itself out that way. But
okay.
I'm always open for a segment like that. Not a problem.
Excellent. I mean, I know you come from Seattle, so you must know that pretty well. So, like, if we have any Seattle-based action movies,
which there are not a lot of.
No, that's true.
But if you're doing disaster movies, I believe Dante's Peak is set in Seattle or Washington, possibly.
Okay. Oh, we might do some Brosnan.
We were supposed to. I remember.
Yeah. So,
I'm sorry. I yield the rest of my time. I just wanted to get that in while we're talking about the plane crash.
Excellent. Is there any other cities you know the exact geography of? Because like a lot of action movies set in New York, and a lot of action movies either set in Chicago or filmed in Chicago pretending to be New York. So there's a lot of that happening.
I'm more West Coast is
more of a West Coast guy.
Yeah. San Francisco, helps. I mean, I can also Google these things. I will make sure that it is a recurring segment every time I'm on. as long as there's some sort of weird flight path in the movie.
Okay. Craig, how does the movie end?
Okay. So they crash. Poe gets out. You think, oh, he's finally going to reunite. We see that Johnny
Mnemonic
is dead.
With an arm severed.
Yes.
That's awesome. Quite a good gag, actually, when they move the body and then the arm's still hanging there with the handcuff.
Yeah. There's basically 4 prisoners left, maybe less, but then we see that Cyrus is getting out, and both Cusack and Cage see Cyrus going on in a fire truck.
They separately see them.
Yeah, and then they both jump on motorcycles side by side that are kind of police motorcycles, and it made me think that I didn't know it was this happened multiple times, but thinking about one of the most what I consider one of the corniest elements of Independence Day, which tops it, is the end where it's like you have, the main action hero, the tough guy, and then somehow the like nerdier guy, in quote, has the cool moment too, and they're side by side. And I think about Will Smith and Goldblum, where they're walking after the like spaceship crashes, and they both have the cigars.
They were smoking cigars.
And both of their women come up to them and they grab them. I always see that part in the movie. I'm like, this is the stupidest thing. And then, I hate that scene. I don't know why, but
I really like that scene because it's so stupid.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, but this was another one of those things where it's like, it's like one of those where, you have these, they're both heroes, but they're kind of, one's the brains, one's the bronze, and now they're both the cool guy together, and then they're going,
I think they really should have pushed this moment. I honestly think they really should have pushed this moment into, because this movie is kind of like hyper masculine to like a kind of parodic degree, and I think they should have really just gone all out and had that kind of cool hero shot of the both of them getting on the bikes and have them fist bump at the same time, just to like really push it over the top.
I was thinking like the open hand, like arm grab, like the cross arm thing, and then they jump on the bikes, like Double Dragon style.
They do that. They do that kind of, the manly handshake that Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger do in Predator.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Well, and then they should have it where somehow Cusack is only in a tank top too.
Yeah, suddenly just for this finale part of the film, suddenly Cusack's put on like 20 pound of muscle that we've just not been aware of.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like a separate part of the movie.
Yeah.
And they chase down Malkovich, Vin Rames, and the crazy guy with the army hat. At one point,
character's called Swamp Thing.
Oh, really? Yeah, Swamp Thing. At one point, Nick Cage runs his motorcycle into the fire truck and it explodes, killing Diamond Dog. Yeah. And then, he goes after Malkovich, and, John Cusack jumps off his motorcycle onto the fire truck, which doesn't explode. And goes for the guy in the front, Swamp Thing. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, they murdered all three of those guys. Nowhere in this movie has it been like, Nick Cage needs to kill these villains in order to see his family again. It's just like, they saved the people on the plane. Why did they just murder these three? Why did they just murder these three? I don't. Yeah. I mean, it's an action movie. I understand why they did it. I was at a loss. I know.
It literally is just that kind of, it's an action movie that the villain must be truly defeated. He must be killed. That's it.
And so the best part too is that he's only using one arm to basically hold on and like move himself as, Cyrus or Malkovich is stabbing that, I forgot what they're called. The spear thing the
fire axe? Oh, no. John Malkovich.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't remember what he had.
Yeah, it's like where you can use it to grab onto, I don't know. By stabbing through it, and then he's able, Poe, or Cage is able to snap it in half and then stab Malkovich through the ankle, and then get onto basically the ladder as they fight. And then Cusack he asks the guy to pull over, and then because that isn't going to happen, he sprays the fire hose into the cabin, filling it up.
Which is really safe. If you're trying to stop the guy that's driving your car, you should definitely drown him in water while you're on top of it.
But then again, because this is an action movie, Malkovich is strapped to the ladder of the fire engine and like goes through the kind of glass part of a building, which
like the
absolutely
thing,
would have killed him, but he comes away from that completely unscathed and then falls down into a thing that is like one of those kind of a big kind of hydraulic things, which then pulps his head, which actually kills him.
But not only...
fun Vegas fact that I'm making up right now. It's because of this movie that all the Vegas walkways that go over the streets now are no longer enclosed because, in case a cherry picker on the back of a fire truck holding a villain, it doesn't smash through them anymore.
Yeah. but you're forgetting, Scott, not only that, he smashes through and then lands on electrical power cords, getting zapped, and then falls in that area.
That is true. But he comes through all of that unscathed. It's only the head pulping that manages to finally kill him.
Yeah. Also, what tunnel were they in? It's freaking Vegas. There's no tunnels.
Yeah, I don't know.
And so that's the end of the movie, and I know we're almost out of time, but I have a note here that I forgot to bring up.
Yeah, sure.
So we see Malloy's Corvette get like hooked by the plane as it's taking off from the junkyard, and then it's like flying behind them, which I was like, this is surreal and hilarious for this action movie. And then the Corvette gets destroyed. But we also see when the plane crashes into the sands, an 80s Corvette, a white 80s Corvette, also gets smashed by the plane, and I'm wondering what is with the hate on Corvettes in this movie. Like that beautiful 1967 Stingray Corvette, or freaking awesome. Was that how he put it? I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, fucking spectacular!
Fucking spectacular 1967 Stingray. But yeah, every chance they had to destroy a car, it was a Corvette, and having someone that likes American muscle, I think that, smash a Camaro.
Yeah, okay. I can't answer that. Other than like the director's British and like maybe he's like, fuck American cars.
Yeah. We should have MGs everywhere.
This movie requires Aston Martins. That's what we want.
Absolutely.
So they defeat him. Nick Cage does say, I want you to know to Larkin, there are 3 men I trust now. And they shake hands. And then he finally gets to see his wife and daughter, which the daughter is a little nervous. But
and 2 of them still aren't you.
Yeah. And then, he has this moment where he's basically, they're all holding each other and crying, and that's basically his moment, and that's it for him. And then Larkin and Malloy, they kind of finally see eye to eye, where he apologizes about the car and says he knows a great mechanic, even though the thing is destroyed completely. Yeah. And he says, well, I was bored with that car anyways, or something, and that's
yeah.
And we end how we begun with How Do I Live by Trisha Yearwood.
Yeah. And there's nice credits where it shows all the cast, but it shows them in points where they're smiling.
Oh, I love it. I love that. I love that they do like the kind of sitcom thing of like they freeze frame on everybody like having a laugh and then their name comes up. Oh, it's beautiful.
that was a staple of 90s movies, I feel like.
Yeah.
Oh, Predator had that, I remember too.
And if not, they would add like the cast singing a song or something. Like,
yeah. I would have really liked if they'd gone like full sitcom and been like, you have been watching, and then like.
Yeah. Did we mention they sang "You Got the Whole World in Your Hands" or in his hands as they crash?
Oh no, we didn't. As they crash, like Steve Buscemi sings that, and then there's like a, what nowadays would probably be like a post-credit sting, but like before the credits, there's like a little sting where. We cut to a casino, and the croupier is saying, "Oh, you feeling lucky?" And then it's Steve Buscemi in a snazzy suit that he just bought in the last 2 seconds, And he's like, lucky and throws a dice.
The evil serial killer got away and is just
having the time of his life.
Yeah.
He is now wearing a Night at the Roxbury suit for some reason and is just playing games at the casino.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't need to escape.
Yeah.
And that's Con Air. Before we finish this episode, cause we're pretty much our time is up. I want to know your kind of final opinion on the movie, because like this is a film that is often treated as like a guilty pleasure, or like a good bad movie, but because I think it works as an action movie and like a kind of almost like a satire of an action movie, I just think of it as a good film. I know there's lots of elements that are wacky and over the top and ridiculous and dumb, but like I think it's actually a good film because I think there's enough humor here to suggest that the people making it kind of know what they're doing and they know that they're turning these tropes up to 11 kind of thing. So I enjoy that element of it. So I think there's enough knowing this for it to become like just a good movie. And I don't know if that's partly down to the freedom the cast got. Like maybe this would be more of a kind of bog standard kind of action movie if it didn't have this cast and they weren't making all these wacky decisions of like, Nick Cage decides he wants to have a southern accent, decides that he's like, this is going to be like his kind of almost like his superhero character. You know, when I watched the video of him describing it and he's being like, this is my character of like a geeky kid who got like beat up, like reading like Incredible Hulk comics and wanting to be like a superhero. So he decided to make a character like that. And then there's other actors who similarly had the freedom to make a lot of their own decisions. Obviously, Dave Chappelle improvised all of his dialogue. John Cusack decided he wanted to wear sandals for no reason, and they were just like, sure, okay, I guess. Like there's all sorts of things like that. So like, I actually rate this as a film, as a good film. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
I do. I think what you kind of said, it makes sense and it worked. I think if it was even the slightest ounce more serious or taking itself more serious, I would have a kind of a different tune about it. I'd be like, but, okay. So I actually, enough of the cheesy elements. Yeah, kind of it remedies, I guess, some of the problems. I would look at it as a movie, especially us looking at it scene by scene breakdown is pretty difficult, but looking at just as kind of a whole movie and something to just enjoy, I like a lot. And I think, I like the offbeat cast as you were kind of talking about. And I like a lot of action movies that use the offbeat cast. And those are normally, I find, some of my favorite ones because it just kind of, it brings a different feeling to it, even if it's, the same script or whatever it may be. But yeah, I liked it. I almost, there's a part of me watching it now where I wished there was even 2 or 3 more scenes to just kind of link certain things together or make it fit even better. But yeah, it's a good time movie. And so I know when we were talking about which one we were going to do between this and Face Off, we both really wanted to do Con Air and in that kind of discussion. And so, yeah, and I'm glad we did it. So.
Brandon?
So this is a well cast, well acted movie. It's it's ambitious in what it is. I think you both mentioned that not taking itself too seriously. It rides that line between satire and like a pure action movie, and it does a great job of managing to to take action elements that are over the top and turn it up to 11, but at the same time be heartfelt but not overly serious. But just serious enough, like that you feel the stakes and that things actually matter in it. And I think it's a brilliant choice to have, I want to say, let's see, Malkovich, Buscemi, Rames, Meany, I think those four, they all kind of play against their like typecast type. Cause, Malkovich and Buscemi are like not going overboard in their character, and they're just like cool and collected for once. Whereas Vin Rames, instead of being the cool and collected one, he's like way over the top as Diamond Dog, and Colin Meaney as well, being an angry agent instead of the nice and caring Miles O'Brien. I thought that really worked for it. Nick Cage, I don't know if I said this. I don't think I said this in the episode yet. This is around the time that he was being considered for Superman. And I never understood that casting decision at all until watching this movie. And I've even heard his voice. You mean as
until you saw the character of Cameron Poe being shot in the arm and just walking through it like it's nothing.
Exactly. That plus, I mean, he was super ripped in this. I always think of Nick Cage as more like a little bit more on the slim side as an action star. I was surprised by that, and I honestly think this was the actual time, because you always see him in the Superman costume with the Con Air hair, the long hair, the Cameron Poe hair. So it's like, I wonder if he was being fitted during this movie. Cause
I think it's around this time that Superman Lives it was definitely late 90s that Superman Lives was kind of being put together. So yeah, I think it's around this time for sure. Yeah.
And then it works as because it riffs on the Die Hard formula, and like I said earlier, like a buddy cop type formula. And it does it in a way that's unique and interesting, and I don't think can be done again.
No.
Is it a good movie? I have a very hard time saying yes, but yes, I think it is a good, and it's just the cheesy, cause like I said, the cheesiness balances out just enough with the seriousness that it doesn't come off as cartoonish, even though it is very cartoonish at times. Yeah. It's well balanced.
And I think that's it. That's a good point to wrap around on. So, you already gave Namely 90s a quick plug, but give it a longer plug just before we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Brandon from Namely 90s, a comedy nostalgia podcast with two childhood best friends looking back at a month from a year in the 90s every single episode. We're celebrating our 2-year anniversary on the third week of May, the third Monday in May. I don't know when this comes out, so check that out if you're interested in seeing the whole range as we look back at 2 years of Namely 90s. And you can find that on your favorite podcasting platforms every Monday.
People will have to listen to that in retrospect, because we're putting this out at the start of June to go with the 25th anniversary. But
go back and listen to it.
We definitely recommend that people listen.
Also, just to squeeze in one more plug, I also stream Monday, Wednesday, Fridays from 4 to 7 p.m. Pacific, and Saturdays from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. on twitch.tv/Somtendo, where we combine wine and Nintendo video games. So just thought I'd get that one in there.
Excellent.
Thanks for having
me. And Craig, anything you want to plug?
So we're on a little bit of a hiatus, but you can follow Bloodhound Picks, PIX, where before we were looking at highlighting obscure and independent horror films and artists, and looking all across that. But we're doing a whole kind of rebranding thing, and we're gonna, I think, look at more of the kind of, can't say too much, but look at more of the process itself and the hands-on elements that go into it of actually making a film. And so we're kind of changing up format completely. But besides that, you can follow me at, I guess the new one I just ended up doing would be called Guilty Animals, all one word, and that's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, even though I haven't really put anything on there. There is a profile. But yeah, follow me there if you want.
Great. So that's it. You can follow us on Twitter at 90s Action. You can follow me on Twitter at Scott Murphy 85, and you can also check out my other podcast. It's a fortnightly interview podcast, New Horror Express. I talk to indie horror directors, actors, screenwriters, novelists, all sorts of different people. There's also a spin-off of that that's called the Guilty Pleasures podcast, where I look at 21st century horror's guiltiest pleasures, with a series of great guests just like Brandon and Craig here. So yeah, there's that. And also, obviously 5 stars, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you're getting them from. Well, that's all for this time. We don't know when we will be back yet. This was a one-off we put together. We might be back again in a few months, but we're not sure yet. But keep your eyes peeled, or keep your ears peeled, and keep subscribed, because there's probably another podcast episode going to come up sometime. So, but that's all for now, and until whenever we meet again, see ya.